introducing Emmy van Deurzen. I guess she doesn't really need much of an introduction because you all know her from her many books and from all of her videos, but still, I will say a few words before we start. Emmy van Deurzen is a philosopher and professor of psychology and psychotherapy with 18 books to her name, translated into well over a dozen languages. She's the founder and director of the New School of Psychotherapy and Counseling and of the Existential Academy in London. Where she is also running her private practice since 1973. She was born and raised in the Netherlands, but she lived, studied, and worked in France before she settled in UK in 1977. Emmy has initiated the First World Congress as well as many associations and organizations, including the Society for Existential Analysis and the Federation for Existential Therapy in Europe and the World Confederation of Existential Therapy. But above all, I think Emmy is a human rights activist and a person who cares about what is happening in the world. For me, she has served as an inspiration for the stamina, determination, and passion with which she perseveres for attaining her goals. So I'm very interested in hearing her speech about living with freedom and meaning in time and space. And as she writes, Emmy's talk will be a whirlwind tour around human existence through time and space. So welcome, Emmy.
Thank you very much, Evgenia. And thank you all for coming together here at this wonderful Congress. And thanks to the Congress organizers for doing all this hard work to make this possible. I want to dedicate this session today to my late mother, whose 100th birthday it is today. Pretty much like a Greek mother she was, Nia. Okay, so we're going to be talking about freedom and meaning. And I must remember not to walk around too much. I got to stay within the view of the camera. So I hope you can see me out there. And if I walk too much, just give me a sign. Okay, click. Here we go. Living with freedom and meaning in space and time. There I am on the ground with the team at the New School of Psychotherapy and Counseling, from which Digby and I will be retiring in August, passing on the reins to Claire Arnold Baker and Danny van Deurzen Smith. So that's what we do at NSPC. We run 5 master's programs and 2 doctoral programs, all in existential subjects. And we have about, well, over 500 students at any one time, most of them doctoral students. But what I will be now doing is doing more for the Existential Academy, which is a community interest company we created, a not-for-profit company we created to pass philosophy on to the community. And as part of that, we already do lots of things. But at this Congress, we will be launching a new thing which is called the Existential Movement, and there will be an international board of advisors for that. And this is about bringing the ideas of existential psychotherapy to a wider public worldwide, and to make a difference in the world, and to actually enable people to live in the ways that we know as existential therapists it is possible to do. So it's about bringing wisdom to the world. These are those 18 books. This is the book I have just sent the second draft of to the publishers, which to my great pleasure is Penguin Publications, my first trade book. So hopefully you will get to see that. It's about the art of freedom, an existential guide to a wiser life, and that is very much with the existential movement in mind. So, what do we need? Why the existential movement? Well, I think we need an existential turn in the world. And what do I mean by that? I mean that we need a much more philosophical and emotional, existential understanding of what human beings are doing on this planet and how we can best live and learn together. It's not just nature that has been raped and exploited by human beings. It is also our own capacity for being the best possible person we can be. All of us are suffering from being chained to ways of living that are stultifying, that are upsetting, and that stop us in our capacity to be true to ourselves and to the best we can be. So we need to learn to be more engaged, more creative, and more reflective. And the structures in the world need to take this into account. And this is very much about the moral courage to stand up for what we believe in and to affirm these different values than the values that are currently dominant in the world, which are the values of using things and also using people and competing with each other for profit. So I think we need to learn a better way to make the most of the time that has been given to us and to rediscover the power of love and light that is available to all of us, every second, every minute. To love is to be attuned, to be attentive, and to be open. To love is to feel free, to make new connections and learn. That is what it means to love. And as Hafiz said, even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, "You owe me." Look what happens with a love like that. It lights up the whole sky. And that is what we've got in our lives. And look what we sometimes do with it. We can do better than that. So back to old Heraclitus, who was very much the inspiration of the title of this Congress. And he was the pre-Socratic philosopher of change and flux. And he lived in Ephesus. And he said, as reported in Plato's Cratylus, all entities move and nothing remains still. All is flow and impermanence. And we know in our bones that the life that flows through us is impermanent. We only have so much time to live in this world and to use everything that's been given to us to contribute something to what is, rather than to keep taking things away from it. Now, freedom comes when we create or see some order in randomness. Randomness is not freedom, but order, too much order, is not freedom either. And there is a funny thing in physics that's been discovered, the second law of thermodynamics, which is that of entropy. Everything becomes less, everything diminishes, and you have to do a lot of hard work to keep things in order. Everything in the universe is, diminishing like that. And high entropy systems, like gases, are more free and can be better rearranged than systems that are tighter and more ordered. And I think it's the same in human lives. You have a choice to make your life solid and really ordered and organized, and to secure yourself. You can do that. But then you diminish the amount of freedom available to you. And the big question is, how much freedom can you stand? How much existential courage can you muster in order to live with freedom? And there is no prescription about that, as Yaki was reminding us at the previous session. There is no prescription to any one of us, whether we should order our lives or whether we should not order our lives, whether we should live with freedom or whether we should live with maximum security. It's up to you. And you alone. But it helps to understand how it works. And it helps to know what choices you are making and what the consequences of that will be. I personally believe that I was given this body to hold as much life and as much vitality as I can muster, and that it is my existential duty to pass on as much of the light that I can pass on to as many people as I can pass it on to. And that will be my only task until I die, which can't be that far ahead as I'm in my 70s. So life is in flux, and this is not negotiable. This is true. It's a fact. It's true for all of us. You are born, you grow, you peak, you wither, and you die. That will happen. And the circle of life goes on. After us, others will come. Before us, others were here, some of whom has left us their wisdom. So, while we're in life, we're also subject to tides and times and cycles. I love this poem. Until I saw the sea, I did not know that wind could wrinkle water so. I never knew that sun could splinter a whole sea of blue, nor did I know before a sea breathes in and out upon a shore. And it's the moon that does that. The moon pulls on the waters of all the oceans in the world. And there's this waxing and waning. And we forget all these rhythms of life that are also happening in us. You cannot always be at your best. And you will not always be at your worst. When things get difficult, remember, it is just part of this ebb and flow of life, and learn to go with it. So looking at the dimension of time, we see that we all change with the passing of time. Maybe time is an illusion, but it is not an illusion on this earth, because the number of times that the seasons have passed by in your life will determine how much longer you can hold on to that body. And you can either live with that in a wise way, or you can try to deny it, but you cannot change it. So the seasons are very much what determine our life cycles. And I have learned to value each season, maybe not quite as much winter as summer yet though, but maybe that will come when I'm old and wise. Descartes said in his meditations, eadem mutata resurgo, I shall arise the same, though changed. And that is a great wisdom, because every time you go to bed and every time you get up, you're a little different and you have new experiences. And yet every day you will do many of the same things and you will have many of the same experiences. And all of us are in that same situation. Edmund Husserl spoke about this a great deal, and we forget about that. We forget about Husserl's great wisdom. It's not just about founding phenomenology. He said everything is genetically constituted, and what he meant by that is that everything is in movement, is in a process of historical change. And things are dynamic, they unfold. To understand a person, you don't take a picture of what they are just now. You want to know how they have gone with that flow and the tides and times of their lives. You want to get a sense of how they surf the waves of life. Vitality is about movement, and it has a source and it has a objective, a goal. So living in time is the key to existential spirituality. To understand how to be in the flow of time is to learn to become a more full human being. Heidegger, of course, in Being and Time spoke about this too. And his word for it was Entwurf, which means design, but literally project. It's about being thrown into the world and therefore being in the throw, moving through time from birth to death. And he said on page 240, as soon as man comes to life, he is at once old enough to die. And every mother who's had a baby will know this. The moment a child is born, your whole concern is to keep that child alive. And you know that it's fragile. And you know it will take all of your care and attention. And so it is with each and every one of you. You're holding inside of you that fragile child. And you have to pay your whole attention to your own survival and your own thriving. Stop being distracted by other things. Start looking at how you are looking, after this precious gift that you have been given and pay better attention to it. So Dasein, of course, is being there, and he spoke about the ecstasy standing out of yourself in your past, in your present, and in your future, and about being in the world with other people, Mitsein, and how our being is always ours. It's always mine. I have full responsibility for it, but I always have care for the world because I need it. And the people around me are part of my world. So the care defines me from the word go, and my being matters to me. So we have these 4 ways, according to Heidegger, to make sense of the world, to be in the world, to really be alive. The first thing is to tune in to our Befindlichkeit, our state of mind, our disposition, the way in which we are situated in the world. The second is to understand things using our verstand, our understanding, to make sense of things. And the third is to use the gift of language, not just to understand and feel into things anymore, but go one step beyond that, to articulate it and to speak it. And the moment you stop just feeling or just understanding things and you start articulating it, you enter into a relationship with the other people in the world. And you can be in dialogue, and you can learn from each other, and you can learn more and more and more. But never forget to go back to your attunement, because without that, you will get lost in lots of different things. But of course, for Heidegger, being lost is also a damn good thing, because all human beings, he said, are lost to begin with. And because we are lost, we are homeless, we are unheimlich. We are not at home. And so the search starts for a safe place in the world to secure ourselves. And as we try to be at home, we forget that we have to remain homeless, because it is only when we are true to our homelessness, which is actually our nothingness, as Sartre would say, which is actually our freedom, only when we allow ourselves to be anxious in our freedom that we can create and that we can seek for truth, which is aletheia, which is unveiling what is hidden. And this, I believe, is one of the great tasks of each human being, to dare greatly to be anxious and to dare greatly to seek for truth and not to think that you know, but to keep searching and to keep listening to the search that each other have been on and what we can learn from that. So as I said in the workshop, Heidegger's idea in Being and Time was that we should be resolute in this quest. Resolute, stand straight on our own, not be lost in the crowd, in the they, and be loyal to our own self. Well, I think it's a good start, but it's not where we need to end up. We do need to find our inner authority in the face of our anxiety and in the face of our freedom and what we're going to do with it. We do need that existential courage in the face of freedom. We need self-affirmation, identity, and authenticity. But it will never be enough. So the later Heidegger's idea that we also need Gelassenheit, the letting be, of seeing being and letting it go, not trying to control it or affirm your resoluteness, but melt away in what is. Perhaps that is something you discover at a later stage of life, where you realize that to be always on the lookout for the presence of wonder is very much what brings meaning to the world. It is a process of discovery of truth, and it's never going to come easily to you. There are many life tasks and duties that you have to do, and if you don't do them, you become dependent on other people and you go downhill. You have to learn how to survive. You have to learn your skills, how to keep your body going, how to earn your living. You have to learn how to be welcomed in the world. How to be welcomed in the world. And that's a big challenge when you're in a big room like this. And that starts by welcoming yourself into the room and knowing not only do you have a right to be here, but we rely on you to be here and hold your side of what we create together. It's about learning to respect yourself and respect each other and find the space and time to reflect rather than to feel you have to obey orders or do what you're told. Take that inner freedom, make a little room for yourself, breathe and think, close your eyes and think, who am I now? Who do I want to be? How do I want to be? Because that is yours and yours alone to decide. And if you don't think about it, the world will crowd in on you and it will find all the emptinesses in you and it will invade you too. So you need to learn to safeguard yourself and you need to learn to thrive, to be resilient and to allow yourself to be transformed the whole time. There are always lots of new possibilities because potentiality is always more than actuality, said Heidegger. And living in time is a huge exploration of the potential that is available to you everywhere, so that you can allow the energy to flow through you and to welcome it, whether it is a nice summer breeze, or it is a horrible storm, allow it through you and stand with it. You get to know yourself. You get to know how you were in the past and why you did and felt as you did, and you respect it and you learn from it. You never dismiss it and say that was a mistake or that was wrong. No, understand the life forces as they went through you and know that you did the best you could. Claim your present and claim your future and all your world relations. Life is an evolutionary process. We are bits of an evolutionary process that we do not know very much about, but it is clear that we're here to learn and pass something on. Your troubles are there to help you in that process. They don't interfere with it. They are gifts to you. Every problem is a way to show you some new angles to how life works. I believe, and that last sentence I think is very important, that freedom and meaning are emergent properties of existence. We only claim more freedom as we get better at managing our flow through time, and we get better at measuring how to be with each other, and we can actually see the freedom that is available in the world and see how we can wind our way through it. And we also see the meanings because we see how things are connected. And with every bit of experience, more pieces slide into the puzzle. And the more of those pieces have come together, and the more meaning we feel because we know where we fit into it all. But also the more freedom we feel because we see the possibilities. Now, Kirk, my friend, here I come to our great divide between humanism and existential work. I have made myself think about this very carefully. So, are we just in the here and now? Thich Nhat Hanh is very right when he said, the present moment is the only moment available to us, and it is the door to all moments. But that is the important bit. It is not a state, because, the second goes and you're in the next moment. It is a portal. Every moment that you live is a portal to your past, to your future, and even to eternity. And here I turn to our teacher, Eugene Minkowski, who really had his act together on this. And he said, the present is all we've got. But actually, the present is composed of many strands. It is composed of the remote past, the immediate past, the immediate past, the immediate future, and the remote future. And so he described in great detail how we are in time in relation to the remote past, which is the zone of the obsolete and history, and how we create our life myth in that. And that's part of the work we do with our clients. Help a client create a life myth that they can live by. And that is a learning myth, a heroic myth, where they feel encouraged rather than destroyed by what has happened in their lives. And so we deal with the loss and regret of the immediate past too, going over it until it is absorbed and understood, and the remorse or the grief in the immediate past. But we also turn to the future, to expectations, checking how realistic they are, or maybe how few expectations the person has and how little they see of their own potential. And we also think about wishes and hopes and dread and anxiety, but also prayer and ethical action and the ultimate meaning of life. Read Minkowski, he'll teach you a lot. So I think time is multidimensional, as the physicists are more and more saying too. We are in all those layers at the same time. I said I dedicate this to my mum, and by doing that, I conjured her up, and she's kind of with me. I don't think she's there, or she has a ghost, or she has a soul, but my mum is with me. She is there, and she will always be. And so you have many people in your lives that you can allow a space in your present. And you have also thoughts about how you would like your future to be, that you can invite into your inner space. And you can also learn to stand in relation to eternity and timelessness and the parallel universes, which is such a wonderful topic. Physicists who believe that at every choice point you have, every choice that was possible is acted out somewhere in a parallel universe. So you are not just responsible for the choice you make, you're also responsible for the choices you haven't made. And the idea of special relativity, of time dilation, of the changes in time, how fast time flows when you do something you're deeply engaged with. You know it's different to when you are bored. You know it. And I can guarantee you that time weighed heavily on my hands when I was a kid. But now it's just like nothing. It's flying past like lightning. So we need to make the most of our time and collect all the meanings we can get, all our past meanings, our present meanings, our future meanings, and very importantly, as you prepare for death, the eternal meanings too. So I use this method called structural existential analysis, and Claire Arnold Baker and myself are in the middle of writing a book about it, which will be published by Routledge. And this is a bit about how we work with time, but this is taken directly from Heidegger. So Heidegger said in the past, we can either live forgetting what has happened or regretting what has happened, or we can live with what he called repetition. We go over it and we recollect from it, literally go and collect from it the elements we need right now to make sense of where we are. And if you start to use your past experiences in that way, they become a huge and wonderful resource of things you have learned and things that are possible. In the present, you can either wait or rush, or you can be in the Gegenwart, in the being within the world, with all those hyphens in place, the connectivity of that moment. In the future, you can be as going toward, as longing for something or dreading something. But you can also learn to be in what he called anticipatory being towards death. And what that is to gather in your entire life and kind of own it, kind of have the authority over this work of art you are creating. When I make a painting, I start with an image of what I want to represent. Then I start doing the meticulous work of, getting the perspective right, getting the medium to work, doing the details of things, adjusting things. But all the time, I think back to the image, the vision that I'm trying to represent. In temporality, we can, as being eternal or infinite, we can reclaim our eiknes, the re-owning of our life. Eiknes means the event, the coming into view of what is possible, to live with the possible. And that, Heidegger said in his later work, directly leads to an immense sense of understanding and therefore gratitude of the being that is given to you. The gratitude for all you've already experienced, all you are currently experiencing, and all that is still possible to experience. He says that thanks alone gives rise to thinking of the kind we know as retribution and reward in the good and bad sense. So I personally like Baruch Spinoza's way of looking at things. He's always been one of my favorite philosophers, the only really Dutch philosopher that you can find, by the way, but really Portuguese. So he concluded that life should be considered, as he said, sub specie aeternitatis, which is Latin for under a kind of eternity. If you can think of yourself in relation to eternity and infinity, then you see yourself in a new perspective. You see how you connect to all that is and that ever will be, and all that flows through you and has ever flown, really, and will continue ever to flow. And when you do that, things take on a very different way of feeling about it. Instead of having dilemmas, you start to have analemmas. You know what they are? I love the analemmas. There it is. Look where we are. The analemma is the way you plot the positions of the sun over a whole year, and it creates a magic figure 8. It's what's called the lemniscate, and we also refer to it as the lazy 8. It's an 8 on its side, so it's a lazy 8. It's like it's lying down. It's the symbol of infinity. And I've used that figure 8 to understand how to work with time. So it always refers to eternity, but within that, each of our lives is actually this flow of 2 figure 8s from past to present, around your present, in the now, and into the future in your mind, back to the present, back to the past. It's a constant dynamic movement of your mind in 2 figure 8. You got it, absolutely. And that is another way of representing it. So there is the eternity around you, but you yourself are doing this recollecting of your past, being in the moment and thinking, projecting into the future. And it goes on and on and on. This was the figure Claire and I came up with for our little book, Existential Therapy, Distinctive Features, to experience the same thing. And there you have it, going around your past, referring it back to your present, to the future, referring it back to the present. But ultimately, it goes wider and wider. As you understand better these different cycles of learning you go through, you begin to understand how it actually relates to something much better. So we rise above the idea of the personal timeline, which is, a way to show how you're doing in your life. But that's a very narrow way of looking at it. You go up as things go well, you go down when things don't go well. You can plot your lifeline, you can play with it at each level of existence. You can kind of see how you're getting on in life. But that forgets that whole thing about paradox and that whole thing about how we actually learn in time. It forgets the dialectical movement, where you have a thesis, your view of the past, an antithesis, your view of yourself in the present, and out of those two, you are creating a synthesis, which is a wider view of how you go into the future. So dialectics matter because they are what enable us to go beyond our troubles, not by just ignoring them or leaving them behind, but by transcending them towards that view of eternity. So looking at this, for instance, if you feel you are weak and vulnerable, which I'm pretty sure you will all feel sometimes. So you start out with the idea, I'm weak and vulnerable, and you see others being strong and aggressive, but they aren't really. That's just a different way of being weak and vulnerable as well. So they're sort of opposites. They're attention, and you wonder, as many of our clients do, should I learn to be strong and aggressive like all those bullies are, or should I remain weak and vulnerable? Well, dialectically speaking, you do both. It's never a compromise. You just make yourself bigger and you feel some of that courage in yourself as well as being weak and vulnerable. And you realize that gradually you're becoming sensitive and resilient. So you have a bit of all of that. And eventually you transcend that and you begin to see elements of that all around you, and you're no longer isolated because you start to recognize that your own process is shared in all these other human bodies and in all these other human lives, and that we're all on the same bloody trajectory, and we make our lives so difficult by making enemies of each other. What we need to recover is that dialectical movement. So that is when the light comes back, what I started with, that sun that shines on us. We begin to embody that light, the light of understanding. In this poem, it says, I cannot tell you how the light comes. What I know is that it is more ancient than imagining, that it travels across an astounding expanse to each of us. May we lift our faces to let it find us. May you lift your face and find it, each of you. May we bend our bodies to follow the arc it makes. And we do need to bend our bodies sometimes. May you be supple and flexible about it. May we open and open more. Because when we open, we can love and we can create and we can understand. And may we open still to the blessed light that comes. And this is way beyond us, way beyond our understanding. This universe that we are a part of, it is a reality. It is a fact. We don't have to have arguments about it. We had those arguments. Poor Galileo and poor Copernicus, they were killed for it when they realized that we were going around the sun and not the other way around. Well, it's the same for each of us. We are not it. We are just some place, some space in which a process is happening. Open to the process and the light will shine in you. Be in touch with the ontodynamics. Do not fear to open to truth and to open your eyes and your heart to what is actually going on. This is what Sartre said in his book Truth and Existence, which was published posthumously. To be open to true vision is to be free and to find your path and your destiny. And this is really important. And you don't have to solve all the puzzles in your life at the same time. Let your boat float on the surface sometimes. Be kind on yourself. Be patient with yourself and learn to live with the mystery instead of having to figure it all out at the same time. Trust that life will show you the way if you gently persist with the enigma that we're all trying to puzzle out. So encompass this as much as you can so that you can surpass your trouble and find your particular mission and direction. And your neurons will follow. It's amazing what those little buggers can do in your head. But don't turn it around. Don't think what matters is what the neurons are doing. The neurons will make more connections if you do this existential work. And the neurons will even regenerate if you allow yourself to remember. And you allow yourself to feel. And you allow yourself to connect They will connect to. They are your servants, not your masters. So the art of living is very much about spirituality, but existential spirituality, as far as I'm concerned. It's about weaving the different strands of life together into a meaningful whole that holds you safe. And strands are constantly added and taken away, and those losses are part of the learning. And they're also very important to us. And we need to tend carefully to all that pain and all that joy, so that we can find ourselves again and know where we are and have a sense of direction and purpose. We tune in to nature. Isn't that a beautiful picture? That sums it up for me, really. But then I love elephants. And we have to get close to nature because it shows us things we forget all the time. And we have to stay in movement. When you stop, you're having a rest, and you need a rest. Every night you need a good rest. But you also need to stay in movement with time and hold it lightly and move from your perplexity to clarity and from despair to hope. What is hope? It is a commitment to the future, a future of possibility, no matter what. Hope is openness. Hope is to be open. Hope is actually the same as love, but love is more directed. It is an openness that allows you to make a commitment to a particular world and to a particular being in that world. And it makes room, you make room for those things in your inner world. But it's always about hope. So Nietzsche said, to be radically free, we need to stop letting existence be a thoughtless accident and take up the challenge of what we are given as human beings and what we can make of this exciting journey, and to love our life in all its manifestations. You know where that is, don't you? That is where you learn to find out that you have to know yourself. And Nietzsche says, loving your fate and destiny in all its manifestations, that's amor fati, that's loving your life. And that is to recapture your radical freedom and to discover that freedom is a source given to you rather than something you have to do. And that is Schelling who said it. So back to that image. We stand strong and we move and we let it all flow through us. So we do that at all levels. I just got to credit my own teacher, which I haven't done enough in my career. Michel Henry was my teacher at the University of Montpellier, and he taught me about phenomenology. But a phenomenology that is a very different phenomenology than people normally talk about it. He said life reveals itself through pathos, through suffering, and what we need is an interior phenomenology rather than a phenomenology of the things in the world. And I've taken that challenge very seriously, and I think I have done him proud. So what we need is a phenomenology of life that makes room for our emotions, because this is how our existential birth happens. We are born physically into the world at birth, but we earn our existential birth by taking it upon ourselves to be open to what is and to not shirk the responsibility to bear our troubles and to learn from them, and to take the responsibility to give our gift to the world and to be creative and to be loving as much as we can manage or muster. And then really truth will set us free. not some abstract truth, but the truth you figure out on your path in action in the world. And that will be an experience of really feeling you have a place under those stars and you are a child of the universe, going step by step with life as your guide. And this is what you do with your clients too. You walk with them and you help them explore the path and all its obstacles. I won't go on about that. You do this with many different levels of engagement, first through the feelings, then through the meanings, then checking the facts, then into the understanding, then figuring out the limitations, then the possibilities, and then shifting towards the dialectics and the transformative process, which leads to the ending of therapy. These compasses of emotions have been my absolute essential tool to understand where people are at. And I know everybody has only a limited amount of freedom at any point, and it is up to them to discover what they can and want to do, and not for me to say. But there are many things that stop our freedom. At the physical level, it's our facticity that stops it. The needs we have for safety, shelter, hygiene, sleep, food, water, elimination, sex, procreation, our aging, our fragility, disability, our lack of resources, including money or self-care or comfort, natural disasters, aggression and destruction in war and revolution, accidents, death, illness, poverty. My God, how do we do it with all these challenges? And that's just the physical. You know, give yourself some credit. Man, you're doing all this. You're having loads of these things on your path. You're doing it. That's amazing.
Emmy,
socially,
we're running out of time.
Yeah, okay, I'll come to the end here. What blocks your freedom at a social level is law and order. We need it, but it also blocks you. Slavery, wage slavery, coercion, rivalry, competition, deceit, fraud, guile, lack of respect, oppression, racism, misogyny, bullying, hierarchies and rules, patronage, fashions, traditions, imprisonment, house arrest, emotional confusion. What stops freedom at the personal level? Fragility of integrity. Confusion about personality or multiple personalities, grandiosity, intolerance of self and other, bias, prejudice, error, character armor, harshness, lack of memory, imagination or reflection, denial, craving for oblivion, uncertainty, unconsciousness, illusions of acrasia. Acrasia in philosophy means weakness of will. Many people have the illusion that they have a weak will. None of us have a weak will. If you're alive, you have a strong will. To survive, you've got to do a lot of stuff every day. If you can support your life, you are okay. Don't let it get to you. Finally, what blocks freedom at the spiritual level? Amorality, random fatalism, ideological obsessions, hedonism and bliss as the only possibility. I'm not against a little bit of hedonism and bliss occasionally, but if that becomes the one and only thing you do, you got a problem. Confusion about contradictions and paradox, lack of purpose and passion, fear of the beyond, of the gods, of the eternal, fanaticism, pursuit of delusion, superstitions, lack of vitality and creativity, no inspiration, purpose, or passion. So now you know why it is so bloody difficult to live. There are good reasons why you despair occasionally, but you have made it this far and you're doing great, and your clients are also doing much better than you think much of the time. Just remember, to find your freedom, to get inner clarity and a sense of direction and meaning again. And you're going to be just fine. Thank you very much.